Hi, everybody. My name is Jared Bendis. I was one of Nina's friends and her publisher, and her last charge to me was make this memorial video happen. You're here, you're watching it. This was Nina's truly last wish. It is hosted on Nina's website. Nina's website will be here long after Nina. This was something she wanted to make sure. Her priority was that you would all get to watch this and that you would share it. With that, I will give you Nina, because she directed this video. Yes, from beyond the grave, Nina directed this video. I have so many stage notes from her, and we did the best we could. We couldn't make everything happen. There are things that are just even beyond us.
In a miraculous life, I was 2.5 pounds at a time when that was very iffy. If I would live. My father sustained my life of can-do when my sister died at 2 weeks, mother died at 39, my other sister died at 29. That and the luck of my terrific husband, Jim, and all of you, my friends, who came along the way for so many good reasons. We were always so grateful. Thanks for being my wonderful family today as you review some of the things we thought and did together to the very end. Hugs to all.
Hi, I'm Amy McGlashan, Nina's oldest daughter. Welcome to this memorial video to pay tribute to Nina Gibans and her very full, very prolific life. Nina died on January 6, 2023, more than 6 weeks after she chose to fast to hasten the end of her life. Most of that time, she still went to meals and activities, sat in front of her computer, watched concerts, chatted with visitors, and took pleasure in all that life had to offer. She only took to her bed the last few days, and even then, Nina did not complain, and instead smiled and chatted and engaged and imagined possibilities until the very last hours. Many of you know this already, but Nina was born on July 30th, 1932, and she was 5 months early, was over just 1 pound, and had a twin who died 1 week later. Nina was, to put it simply, a survivor. More than that, she was a thriver. I predict that many, if not all, of whose pre-recorded videos to Nina are in this service use the word force somewhere in their tribute to describe what it was like to know and to work with Nina. I regret we're not together in person to share a laugh over that and in naming it. Whether or not it's her dogged persistence, her laser focus, inspiration and vision, and determination is what enabled her to survive, or whether she developed those characteristics as a result, it doesn't even matter. What does is that she made the very most of every minute using these qualities to pursue contributions to Cleveland arts and culture and beyond in innumerable, profound, and lasting ways. She was animated by new ideas and projects, but she was just as passionate about preserving the cultural history that preceded them. She saw herself as a poet at her core, particularly as she turned more inward in her latter years and since our dad, her husband of 66 years, died. But her proudest moment ever, I think, was when she won the Cleveland Arts Prize in 2009, when her community recognized her contributions to the public arts space. For those of you watching who didn't know her well, the vast range of her interests, influence, relationships, and impact will inevitably come through in this video and impress. And for those of you who did know her well, we assuredly will do a lot of head nodding and smiling and validating as we pay tribute to the force that was Nina Freedlander Gibans. And now I'm going to do a reading, Never Fully Extinguished, by Patricia Sheldon. In this hour of holy stillness, we gather to honor the life and the person we love. In this hour of holy stillness, we remind ourselves that the flames of life and love are never fully extinguished. In this hour of holy stillness, we offer ourselves for sharing the weight of each other's grief. In this hour of holy stillness, we offer the strength of our love to help others survive their pain and grief. In this hour of holy stillness, we call forth from each of us the power we offer out of life, out of loss, out of love.
Oregon Truck by Nina Gibans. Oregon Truck, what have you got? Behind the cab, hiding from my view, across the bridge, around the bend. 3 rivers hugging the earth, framing crops and the seasons. River salmon caught upstream. Lazy living, fishing on the front porch of a houseboat, catching the early edge of sun, salmon pink, reflected in the ripples, running side by side with logs and fish, channeled like swimmers racing roots. Trees, winter pink bark feathering the fields, mimosa leaves, squash specialties, earth cupping seed, knoll high mounds, hay lay anew, waiting for blossoms. Green sightlines growing rows against a color field of sky blues, like paintings fit to the horizon, changing with the season. Oregon Truck, what have you got for me behind the cab, hidden from my view? Across the bridge beyond the bend.
When Nina was in hospice, a volunteer named Kyle was having a conversation with her. And he realized as she was speaking, it was like she was reciting or composing or sharing with him a poem. He wrote it down as best he could. It's not verbatim, it's paraphrasing. But I want to share with you, with permission of Nina's children, Nina's last poem. Is the place across the street special? Yes. Is the corner special? Yes. Is where my father lived special? Yes. Are people special? Yes, most of the time. Is family special? Yes. Are friends special? Yes. Is nature special? Yes. Is the weather special? Yes. Is everything special? Yes. Every moment is special because every moment gives birth to the next special moment. The corner where my father lived is special and blossoms the next moment that is special. Every special moment adds the next, all blossoming into more special moments that keep growing. Every moment is special. Every special moment adds the next and grows the next special moment. Life is like that.
Beyond Impressionism, Butterflies by Nina Gibans. We still don't get it. Painters who catch a thought in the middle of a mood. I need new eyes, blinded by white light, drunk on color. Magicians, stirring air and water, mixing it with our eyes, chasing their vision through windows to gardens or seashores. City cafes, sitting spaces become stages. I feel at home, mastering the magic of butterflies, incandescence and fragility.
What can I say? Mom was a tour de force, both as the mother of 4, poet, author, force de majeure in the Cleveland art music world, and let's not, of course, her 60 years of happy marriage with Dad. They had a long and living relationship till the end that I know she treasured and was a source of mutual admiration and affection for each other that let them blossom and do what they loved with the support of the other. Truly the Mutual Admiration Society. I didn't necessarily agree with her choice at the end, but again, when she made up her mind, she just put a plan in action and she did it with bravery and determination. If we had a call about visiting from afar 3 months away, we would get the plans and itinerary the next day. That's the way she lived her life so much of the time. It could be aggravating, but I have to admire her tenacity. Excuse me. In some ways, she got more productive and interactive as she grew older. Of course, that's me being a son who lived in another state and became much more aware of how she lived her life as she was nearing the end of her life. She was remarkable in that she never let her handicap or cerebral palsy get in the way. Growing up, I really didn't know much about her situation. All I know is that she walked with a limp. She didn't talk about it or make a big deal of it. It was only until her last years that it became more of a factor in how she had to deal with her health issues. And then she talked about it more. Her approach to life with its multifaceted angles and inputs was a blessing for myself and my siblings. We got to do things that seemed very progressive when I look back, and I'm very thankful for those opportunities and their openness and experiencing and giving us experiences as we grew up. Who else let their 17-year-old son take the family car out west for a 3-week camping tour of the West? Or decided after a few very loud concerts when I was 15, such as Creedence Clearwater Revival and Iron Butterfly, that I wasn't going to get corrupted. Can you imagine Nina at an Iron Butterfly concert, 7th row? Their parenting style produced an independent streak that mirrored theirs. And then there was the art and music, which was so dear to them and had such an impact on how they lived their lives. She and Dad had an indelible impact on our appreciation of the art world. And I've even grown to like the Cleveland Art Museum, although I'll never like it like she loved it. It was her essence, their essence, her second home. When we came to Cleveland, we knew there was a museum visit somewhere in the itinerary, like it or not. It was in her blood, and she couldn't help herself. The last big family get-together in November 2022, before she started her path to the end, involved 15 of us going on a bus to, where do you think? Cleveland Art Museum. She just loved it, and that was our best gift to her, because that was just, she just loved it. Her last birthday party at age 90 involved going to, guess what? Several museums. We rented a bus and off we went. What can I say? She liked museums. She was Mrs. Cleveland. She loved the city, its culture, lifestyle, quaintness, size. She loved writing about Cleveland. A true ambassador, although she never quite succeeded with myself or my siblings in convincing us to move back. Mom wasn't much of a jokester or a quipster type of person, but she enjoyed a good laugh, and her approach was much more intellectual and balanced. Her approach was much more intellectual and balanced. Parentheses, sometimes this, parentheses, something that. We did, however, joke about her artistic brain saying she was doing a Nina. That was meaning she was thinking about 3 different things at the same time and expecting us to be right there with her. Moving from one thought to another, thinking we would be able to follow. I don't say this as a criticism. It was just humorous, because we would have to ask her to clarify, and we would shake our heads trying to keep up. There were many family laugh sessions as we tried to figure out what we were talking about. She had a way with words, but was very rarely directly critical, and she didn't have a mean bone in her body. But yet she was able to lead, teach, guide, sometimes albeit a little strong, but with a manner which got her to her goals. And here we are doing a video tribute to her, because that's what she wanted versus an in-person celebration. Back to her organizational leadership skills, she was a true leader and a matriarch in our family structure. If we talked about plans, as I indicated, she'd be on it. And that's the way she lived her life, with doing so many projects that she loved to do. She was writing books till the end. She was doing poetry workshops, learning. It never ended, and that was a really nice and neat thing about her. She loved and had many satisfying relationships with many people, and had a way of touching folks and staying with touch with people with her circle that was enormous. It seemed like she always knew somebody whenever we went out. Her emails enabled her to connect with so many people, and we thought that towards her later years, if she ever couldn't use her computer, then she would be lost, and she used it till the very end. She'll be missed. In the last year, we heard stories of our family that we'd never been told, or at least that's the way it seemed. Her memory was sharp, and she loved telling old stories of family or friend history. She had a fear that we would forget or not know, and she really had a passion for preserving her legacy and that of the family. It really drove her. We had many nice conversations in the last several years, and I'll miss that. She was the glue that kept our family and our extended family together, and I'm going to miss her incredible memories, recitation of family history that no one else will unfortunately remember. I will miss that part as well. I will miss you, Mom. Rest in peace.
Beyond Impressionism, Reunion by Nina Gibans. My rearview mirror, memories brought up to date, after all the years of peripheral vision. Driving by the dance hall of my youth, I dance again. I am having a reunion with myself. I look around for familiar faces, places to start. Stories spring memories, spin more stories, bring people together with new details. Glass beads around my neck reflect stories I want to tell, found in the chandelier of the room, displaying color as tales grow. Out of memory and magic. Flowers on the table, blending bright and subtle like a smiling friend. Petals fall like years, one by one. Through the rearview mirror, street theater triggers, my part pressing my script into play. Lines written just for me, whispered from the wings if I should falter, in this third act, peopled by a cast of friends from Act 1 and 2, finding their way through dialogue remembered, threads loose, tied, or knotted. This is me, I say. Is that a good beginning? I never could snap my fingers smartly or do small talk. I will learn now.
Hi, my name's John Gibans. I'm the second of 4 children of Nina, second son, and here's my tribute to my mom. I kind of title it Admiration. Start by, I'm not sure if admiration is a term most people use for their mother as they're a mom, but what I think I appreciated growing up for myself was the importance that my mom and my dad put on education, so that I got the best of that and the best of opportunities and the ability to follow our passions. And in many ways, I think if that didn't happen, some of my own passions, which obviously include love of the outdoors and mountaineering and all that, may have not become quite the fruition the same, because I would have had the same opportunities. But really admire my mom in many ways. I admire her for her place and her importance on heritage, our Jewishness, not so much religiously, but culturally, and how proud she was, and my dad, of being the first Jews, and many in our family being the first Jews in certain situations, and overcoming those obstacles, and how important that was to her. Also admire her for her importance in stressing family. She was so proud of her Freedlander family, whether it was my grandfather and his accomplishments in medicine, not only academically and surgically, but how he really believed in making sure that all Clevelanders, no matter who they were, got equal access to medical care. It's something I always remember, especially as a doctor. Obviously, she was very proud of her Freedlander heritage in Worcester and the legacy that they've borne there. I always find it fun when I'm working at my ski clinic here in Colorado, nothing far away from Ohio, how people will come in from Worcester, Ohio, when I tell them who I am, what family I'm from, how their eyes open up and they are in awe. And many of them actually have stories, which are really fun to hear. That's been great. Obviously, I admire my mom for her love of Cleveland, whether it's the people, the place, the history, the West Side Market, University Circle with Severance Hall and the Art Museum, the Lakeside. That was so important to them, and enough that they wrote about it. And I always like to call my mom and my dad the most Cleveland-centric people I know. But as much as I joke about it, I think that's really important, that was so important to them, to have a sense of place. Obviously, I admire my mom for her work, though I think she was the exemplary form of, if you love what you're doing, it's not really work. And all her phases of, from art museum and masters to Cleveland Area Arts Council to Children's Museum to everything else, how that's who she was. And certainly being, I think, right-sided, left-sided brain 180 degrees from her, I really appreciated how she thought, her processes, her involvement, how she worked that way. I also appreciated that all the artwork and legacy that I have here in the house, whether it's paintings or prints or chairs, she knows everything about everyone and documented it all so well. I always tell the story of when my mom was working from home and was on the phone a lot, since she worked any time of day, and had dinner on the stove with the pots boiling over and the buzzers for the timers going off. And she couldn't hear it because her one ear that was good because of the acoustic neuroma she had. And her one good ear was pressed to the phone. She couldn't hear these things, so I would spend my afternoon yelling at the top of my lungs, "Mom, dinner!" But it's just a reflection of how she loved what she was doing. She was always involved in that. And I admire her for that. I admire her for her sense and the importance of our family when it comes to really documenting it and taking the extra step and so appreciating now our development of our family archives. So it's always there for me to look at, for people to see, and there they are. Family archives. And of course, always with an artsy frame in the front that we made ourselves. I think the other thing I really admire about my mom is, in spite of her disability, how she really stayed involved and engaged as she grew older. And here she is, up until the end of her life, writing, reading, staying engaged, unlike what we see so much in the elderly. Again, being in medicine, sometimes I see the worst of the aging process and how people are not in control, not in command of their life, and how that was so important to her, and how she was going to make the determination of how her life would end, and by her involvement, her decision rather than someone else's. And I think that's a model to us all. Didn't work out perfectly, but it still something she chose, and I appreciate that. Anyway, a model for us all, and Mom, I really admire you, and I love you.
Hi there, I'm Melissa. I am Nina's only granddaughter, and wanted to share a few things that I shared with her before her passing with all of you, in terms of the lessons that she taught me and the things that I will now carry with me going forward. She taught me the ability to communicate emotions through words, through the beauty of her poetry. She taught me the ability to be resilient. She experienced true moments of loss throughout her life and really was such a demonstration of courage and resilience through those moments. She taught me how to think outside the box and create your own path, as she really did. She taught me how important family is and always kept that really central for us. And she taught me how you can hold both kindness and persistence. So with that, I will end there. I will keep these gifts of wisdom from her with me through the rest of my life, and I will miss her.
Hi, I'm Kelsey, one of the grandsons, and I wrote this about my grandmother. It's called Ode to Nina. Nina Gibans, Nina Gibans, Nina Freedlander Gibans. Yes, that is my grandmother. Lover of the arts, master of poetry, expert in determination. I appreciated how her and my grandfather's passions surrounded them. Books, artifacts, sculptures, and paintings. As if building a library or museum for thought. So much to observe, so much to absorb, and so much to learn, borrow, hold on to. Creating a nest of ideas on the 11th floor atop a sturdy foundation in Cleveland to nurture the soul, mind, and spirit. And nestled within this idea sanctuary grew feelings of joy and gratefulness, flavors of grit, culture, and of course, determination. But most of all, memories of family and love. My grandmother's choices were never accidental, and regardless of the path she took, the reasons in her mind, or the time it took to get her to her destination, she was always considerate and deliberate. Of a selection that we could never fully see or understand, her mind would already be made up. From the placement of the pillows, to the menu at the table, to the itinerary of a family gathering, she always followed her purpose, bold and defiant. Whether or not these were the right choices, we'll never really know for sure. Without question, one fact will always remain. Through her decisions, she upheld and protected a path for exploration and self-discovery, and a path for creativity. It is this path that I am grateful to follow for myself, and it is this path that I hope to preserve for generations to come.
Hi, I'm Don Friedheim, and I'm delighted to participate in this memorial to Nina Gibans. Nina was actually born 1 month before my brother and I were born at Mount Sinai Hospital. I've known her through the years. She was from birth to the very end, she was a driven, determined, purposeful gal who never let her challenges deter her from participation in everything that she was interested in and really becoming an expert in the areas that she specialized in and so well known as she is in so many areas. You know, she would draw people into her projects, and she was masterful at that. Like the Children's Museum, when she and a group were starting that, she drew me in. She wanted somebody from the university, and we worked on that together for several years. But I got her into one project. When our temple announced they were moving to the suburbs, we really objected to that. Gerda and I objected to that terribly. And so did Nina. And they were going to move the Sunday school out. And we went to the rabbis and said, we really should stay down at University Circle. It was a time of a lot of movement into the suburbs and sort of a fleeing of the inner city. But they decided they would keep our Sunday school there at least for a year, which they did. But when they moved the Sunday school out, Nina and I got together and we fashioned what we called the at-home Sunday school, where we had teachers from Case Western Reserve who were living in a havurah, housing of Jewish kids together, and they took on as a project our Sunday school. And we met in various homes. We drew children from not only our congregation, but others as well. And it probably became the thing I was best known for in Cleveland for a while was our Sunday school. I didn't leave the temple, and our rabbi used to come up to me and say, "How's your Sunday school going?" And I said, "Pretty well." And it really was a success for a long time. Nina and Gerda, my wife, became good friends when we moved back to Cleveland. We exchanged a lot of dinners at her home in Warrington and ours in Cleveland Heights. And then when Nina and Jim moved to Shaker Towers, Gerda and I would visit, and Gerda said, "I want to live here." And in a few years, we actually did. And Gerda and Nina and Jim and I exchanged a lot of meals together. We visited restaurants in Cleveland. They introduced us to a lot of restaurants. And we really enjoyed a wonderful, wonderful friendship through all the years.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jared Bendis, and I miss Nina so much. I spent so many of her last years just being a problem solver. Nina would ask me questions. She'd say, "Make this happen," and I'd make this happen. Before she passed, she charged me with keeping her legacy alive, making sure that her websites stayed up, making sure that her books stayed published, making sure that you all got to see this. It's an enormous burden. It's an enormous responsibility, and it's a great honor to have been her friend and to keep the flame alive. There were times that she would just say, "Can you do this? Can this happen? Can we?" She had these visions of what she wanted, and you couldn't say no to her. I think of her often, and I miss her very much. During Nina's final days, she called me up. She called me a lot, but she called me up and she's like, "There's something you need to know. I'm still here because my brain won't let go." And I'm like, "What do you need me to do with that?" And she's like, "Oh, no, nothing. I just wanted you to know." So many of the things that Nina would tell me about, it was, she wanted to make sure that everybody knew. And I want to make sure you knew as well.
Hi there. My name is Sabina Kretschmar, and my friend Nina Gibans and I bonded over our love of art history and especially the art and artists of Northeast Ohio. We both studied, collected the stories, and loved to share the art and artists of the region with whoever would listen, in whether through writing or exhibitions or just talking. And over the years, we would get together, and inevitably, I began to notice that after our meetings, a lot of times I'd walk away with a to-do list, of which I was happy to do. I actually think that persuasiveness was maybe Nina's superpower. Um, and there came a time when I was particularly busy. My bakery had just started and I was on 2 boards. I was working 7 days a week. I was in desperate need of a vacation. And Nina really wanted me to be on the board of Art Neo. And I knew this time I would meet with her, but I was going to say no. And I did 3 times before I said yes. I have been thinking how she did that. Nina called herself a nudge. But I don't think that was really the most important part of her superpower. Her real magic was her unfailing belief that you could be more and do more. Her belief in the importance of the arts to a life worth living and to doing all that you can to make sure that everyone shares in that kind of beauty. Um, I think it was the example she set, working really hard for the common good. And oh my gosh, that spark, that energy. I mean, I visited her about 2 months before she died. And here she is multitasking. She's got a weekly poetry group online. She had a visitor as well as myself with, a to-do list as well. But really, the reason I wanted to say yes to Nina so often was just the fact that she oozed genuine warmth, joy, and optimism. Nina cared deeply about the arts and never lost that childlike wonder, but she cared even more about the people. I'll miss her contagious smile, her boundless energy, and her wonderful loving nature. Love you, Nina.
Hi, I'm Joan Levy, and I believe I'm one of Nina's oldest friends. We both went to kindergarten at Euclid Avenue Temple. I don't remember that, but I do count that as being part of the years that I knew Nina. Anyhow, by the time we reached 7th grade, we belonged to a group that attended Florence Shapiro's dancing school, where we met boys our age, and we also belonged to sororities. And we belonged in junior high to one called AST, and when we got to high school, we belonged to one called Phi Beta Phi, which consisted basically of the same girls we knew before. During those years, we formed very close relationships that really lasted a lifetime. And they lasted to this day, although there aren't that many of us still living, unfortunately, but our relationships mean more than ever at this time. Anyhow, when it became time for our 60th birthday, Nina and Marilyn Beadall and myself decided that we should have a 60th birthday party for the girls. So we met weekly at Nina's apartment, and we each brought a lunch, and we sat there and we planned a birthday party. And the birthday party met at Pat Plotkin's, and we received notes from about 14 people saying that they would attend. We had Claire Wallach, who came all the way from Hawaii. We had Sally Seidman, who came from California, and Iris Sachs, that came from Mobile, Alabama. So you see, people were excited to come. And when Claire came, she brought with her orchid leis for all of us to wear during the party. Well, it was a great success, and we all had a wonderful time. And when it was all over, we decided that we had to have another one. So we had another one, and maybe we had one or two even more, but nobody seems to remember how many. So we remember some individual events that went along with the main party, but we can't remember the parties. Anyhow, in years later, when Nina was so very sick, I was visiting with her, and one of the things that we were talking about, we had so many memories, was this party. And we were remembering it so much that I thought I would mention that today. And I have brought some pictures, a few pictures from that first party along that I want to share with you.
When Glenn Gould stopped. Glenn Gould was a Canadian pianist widely admired for his interpretations of Bach's keyboard works and remembered for his idiosyncrasies, which included singing along with his performances in a low but audible voice. It was when Glenn Gould stopped on an F sharp in a forever perfect Bach, except for his singing along, and asked that the open door be closed. The world stayed inside. For one unblemished hour, he painted lavender arpeggios, magenta chords, threading our thoughts into fabrics, into cohesive ideas. Concentration has that effect of winding and unwinding, of fluidity and neutrality, stopping only when the moment came to open the door.
Hello, I'm Wendy Abrams Fishman, Nina Gibans' niece. Nina requested I read this for her tribute, probably because I'm a physical therapist. It's called Saving Our Lives, Band-Aid by Band-Aid. I started life as a 28-week, 2-pound baby, not breathing on my own. My twin sister died 2 weeks after our birth. My surgeon father determined that I was going to make it. Even his colleagues challenged him, why try? That was 1932, when babies of that size rarely lived. Today, the options have changed dramatically due to the evolution of many possibilities for salvaging every part of the body in need of help. In those days, pediatricians and surgeons corrected and cared for the problems. Many premature babies did not live long, certainly not to adulthood. Through the 20th century, physical and occupational therapists are those who study how to help most after doctors determine the nature of the distress. Cerebral palsy is one of the most common results of the birth trauma, but there are many types of resulting built-in injuries that determine how a person develops and what treatments are needed. Due to sheer luck, professional supervisions over such things as braces, movement, including sit to stand, walking, standing, all modes of hand-eye contact, and limbs in motion, I have climbed personal mountains of all sorts. I have had a lot of help. I have lived a pretty miraculous life, a magical 63-year-old marriage, 4 children, 2 sons, 2 daughters, and have had a healthy, positive, and successful career. My luck was determined by the neurobiological nature of my particular brand of the disease, which left me able to think, analyze, and one could say minimally physically debilitated. My father had mapped a life of do what you can. I really paid big attention to it. After I was 70, I was left to my passions for the arts, writing, and community work. I found myself needing advice, assistance, guidance, supervised, and carried on. I have found mentors from the physical therapies. There is no research on older persons with cerebral palsy. I am it. I have been on panels to help students understand the challenges and have advocated for better disability services on a county level. When it became apparent that my husband and I needed to move to assisted living, we did. The environment is one he had something to do with renovating. The assisted living staff was one we hoped would understand the conditions, and there was a very professional physical therapy component. It has always been my job to, quote unquote, educate those I am working with. Always. Camp counselors, teachers, professors, doctors, whoever needed information. My physicians have been great and still are. Big surgeries for major things like acoustic neuromas and skin grafting have not interrupted my generally positive attitude and recoveries. I want to remain myself as long as I can safely. I need others to trust and believe what I say and how I feel so that I can work. Quote, I am not balanced in the chair. The feel is incorrect, unquote, so that I can work with them and be positive. It is not in my vocabulary to say can't do if there's a way to do. There are some things that I cannot do. I was feisty day one of my life, and I can assure everyone that I do react when I feel I am misunderstood or when something is simply not true. I have many behaviors that are not possible to change, and I am in great pain a great deal. But this situation has been a medical challenge through the years. Thanks and gratitude to everyone, the medics who struggled to solve the issues, and to every supporter since childhood, giving me the many opportunities to do what is possible with my body. So many common aging issues get in the mix. The matter of safety is the highest priority of this top-of-the-line assisted living facility. And everyone, the aides, the nurses, my doctors, and everyone that keeps us safe are treasures at this difficult time, given for all the external reasons that layer our path. I want us to be heard as we look at what that means in terms of our mutual needs as we work together on the current circumstances. Perhaps we will find some simple things, or perhaps we will find some simple changes that work as we think together. The important thing is that we are thinking together. It took the feistiness, not always a popular trait, having the important thinking outside the box attitude, and willingness to persuade change for improvement and training. I am excited and proud of all of us. It is not always the institution way, it became Judson's way. What was it all about? Standing and sitting on a commode, not rolling around on a bedpan, which made my body hurt. Here is a poem that Nina wrote. She wanted communicated to all. It is entitled Ambassadors of Life. I am an ambassador of life for more than 80 years. A father that breathed for me, fought off the naysayers who said, why try? Gave me wings to fly, sprigs of baby's breath, delicate white, as the winds would take me, and at the very least, I saw some possibilities. I love the way the monarchs find warm places and spend time growing. I had warm growing places. Everyone needs a warm growing place. The woods were dense. Schools had to be trained. A 3-digit typist dropping pencils in a warm growing place. Heights were hard to reach climbing. Real mountains like Mount Washington or mountains in the kitchen. Sugar, salt, peanut butter, pans, a stovetop, a shelf, cookbooks, papers, cans, doorknobs, drawer knobs, a warm growing place. Telephones on hold with one good ear, with friends, with stores, with tickets makers, with appointment makers, with doctors, sustaining a life, blossoming in warm growing places. Reaching out, lights, living rooms, shelves, libraries, too high, too low, stacks of papers everywhere, books, straighten up, on end, piled, picking up loose threads, placing arms in warm sleeves, family sustenance, honey makers, our hive, balance and imbalance, leaving life's nest daily, grounded, dried wings, roses, love, the butterflies in warm places, ambassadors of life. This was dedicated to my father, a renowned surgeon, and other physicians, physical and occupational therapists, camp counselors, teachers, aides, and friends. This was written by Nina Gibans in the summer of 2020. Thank you.
I'm Nancy King-Smith, and I'm honored to be asked to contribute to this legacy video for my friend and colleague, Nina Gibans. I'm sad that she's no longer with us and that she won't be able to see this final product. But the whole concept is so Nina. I had met Nina, but our first real encounter was in 1985 in Shaker Square as she was interviewing me for a position at the Cleveland Children's Museum. I was fairly new to Cleveland, and I was thrilled to be invited to join the staff as manager of volunteers and to work with Nina, the founding director, Jerry Johnson, and other talented staff to get the museum up and running in University Circle. I quickly realized that Nina's mind was always several steps ahead of mine in concepts and in making connections. For decades, that has been part of the joy and the challenge of being in Nina's presence. Throughout my 9-year to tenure at the museum, the last 5 years as executive director, Nina was there, encouraging us to be more than a place, but to be a leader and innovator in how children's museums could link to formal education and to the larger community. After we both left the Children's Museum, we continued our friendship, which meant wandering through many interests: nature, poetry, architecture, music, as well as our children's and grandchildren's lives and accomplishments. The gatherings at Nina and Jim's dining room table to explore the soul of Cleveland were always unique and enriching. Nina's vision was initially hard for me to grasp, but I knew it would be interesting and would come to fruition in her own creative way, and it did. My conversations with Nina as she approached her end were always amazing and filled with memories of people and things that my somewhat younger mind had forgotten. Her departure leaves a deep void in my heart and in our larger community, but her generous and lively spirit and her brilliant and creative mind leave a legacy we can all cherish.
In April of 2020, when the COVID pandemic was gaining in strength, I sent out a note to people inviting them to join a weekly poetry discussion group on Zoom. We've been meeting almost weekly ever since. I don't remember whether Nina joined right away or weeks or months after, but when she joined, she was one of our regulars, and she always participated actively in our robust conversations, adding her interpretations with conviction and with clarity to those of others. When I asked people to suggest favorite poems, Nina quickly suggested Mary Oliver's Wild Geese. When I indicated that I wanted to feature in one of our sessions poetry written by participants in our group, Nina offered a poem she had written some years before, which we then read and discussed during our June 30th, 2022 session. Here is her poem, Letters, by Nina Freedlander Gibans. There is something about opening an envelope from a friend, written in hand, stained with a raindrop, slipped through the door so the dog will not run out, barking and leaping. I sit at the table to read and to reread. I know the handwriting, read what I want to hear, say what I think to myself, and then put it in my drawer to season. I will discover new words, tell you about friends who have missed you, give you that recipe I said I would send, plan as if tomorrow were yesterday and you lived around the corner. I will pick up the pieces that made us friends and dust them off gently. We will miss Nina Gibans, her vitality, her passion, her winning smile, her intelligence. We will miss all of these things about her and more, terribly. But we know that we were blessed by her presence among us.
Hi, again. These are my reflections on Mom. And thinking about what I wanted to share with you today, I decided I would share some vignettes that captured life with Mom, some expressions of gratitude for what I learned from her, and finally, a reading a well-known poem by Mary Oliver, her favorite poet. So here's some of the vignettes. Whenever she called on the phone, it rarely started with, "Hi, how are you?" While often at the time that would frustrate me, I do know its source is not from her not caring, but for her not being able to contain her own excitement for whatever it is that she wanted to share with me, or whatever urgency about whatever she wanted to ask. I'm sure that doesn't surprise many of you. We all know how single-minded and passionate she was about her work. When we would gather across the country in various family gatherings, it was inevitable that she'd bring up whatever her work was in conversation. And when she was director of development at the Children's Museum, we banned her saying the words Children's Museum. We banned the conversation at that gathering, and instead, so the whole weekend she would go at the because she just couldn't contain herself. Many of you have heard the story before. The infamous "how we all learned how to cook" story was because she would come home from work, full day of work, and throw some stuff on the stove and then go sit at the dining room table and read her paper and burn things, or it would be frozen vegetables or whatever. And we all just decided we would rather have good food. And if it meant us learning how to cook, then we would do it. Without fail, every time they came to visit wherever we were, Mom would bring with her piles of paper that she had printed out, and she would shove into our hands anything else she wanted us to know about, that she thought was interesting, that she thought was exciting, that she thought was important, so that the car would be packed with tote bags when they arrived, and they would go home with a lot of empty bags. She went through a lot of paper. She tried constantly. One of her passions, one of her ongoing projects, was to get us to pay attention to her family's history. As the last Freedlander, it felt it was critical to her. And it's not that we didn't care. It was that she was persistent, as she was with everything. It was incessant. And after a while, sometimes would fall on great deaf ears, to her great frustration. To everyone's satisfaction, though, she came up with a solution, which was she collated all of it, made 8 copies, one for her and Dad, one for each of us kids and my cousins, and then created these beautiful boxes with marble tops that everyone got to make and keep. And now we all have all the artifacts. When our son Kelsey was a toddler, one visit he just started saying, "Nina, phone, Nina, phone," because he had heard his grandfather say it so many times. For Mom and Dad's 50th anniversary, they brought 50 old, outdated, and some even antique household items, and had the grandchildren guess what each was and what it was for and how it worked. That was fun. Once she started her fast, she requested that we come early enough so she could be well enough and take pleasure in watching us go through all of her stuff before she died, and have each of us decide what we wanted to keep. She even pleasured in watching me pack it all up and send off to the grandchildren what they had requested, even when we were using her summer clothes as the packing material. What I learned from, or ways I am grateful to Nina, from the heart. I admire how she persisted regardless of what was in her way. In fact, I marveled at it. I just marveled. I admire how passionate and energized she was always. She got out of bed every morning of every day of her life, ready to move mountains. I'm grateful to her for the world of art and music and culture that she exposed us to. I'm grateful for how independent we were allowed to be, whether or not out of necessity because she was working. I remember taking a cab to my music lessons, the rapid transit to my dentist, flying to and from summer camp in Vermont on my own, starting at age 12. We could do those things in those days, of course, but even then they had their risks. She never let the little things get in her way or spoil her day. She planned early and didn't procrastinate. When my family was going through a tough time, she rallied my siblings and they all chipped in to buy us our dog. When I used to chide her for not getting the story right, like in for holiday letters or whatever, it really wasn't more a matter of her seeing things through rose-colored glasses than it was for her wanting to disrespect or not pay attention. She never let her pain or disability define her. In our final conversation of just with the two of us, she told me she and Dad had always admired the many things I did well, or how many things I did well. After an afternoon of watching my husband, our sons, and their partners have a blast making up rules in our ping pong tournament in the Judson Manor during our last full family gathering, she told me my family was perfect. All right, and now I'm reading, I think, what was, if not her favorite poem, one of her favorite poems that I'm sure many of you have heard. The Summer Day by Mary Oliver. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
Music for troubled times. My children, our families, the world is in your hands. When you've taken the scenic trip through life, life has seized our souls. Unsure, unknowledgeable, but who we are is the who we are now, out of the who we thought we were. Secret angers rob and suck our energies. No precise goals rise and spread in all directions. Music is my salvation. Perhaps yours. I can hear the haunting folk ballads and laments of Dowling and Purcell wafting in the empty streets, or Americans raising their voices in joyous harmony after the outbreaks of disease 2 centuries ago, or the sound of violins, flute, dulcimer, and harp from the music of Purcell and Handel, rescuing my searching souls. I debate watching a dance performance, visiting historic buildings, or watching nature, the story of jazz, the history of Mr. Rogers, or the old oldies, the cooking classes, and all of the versions of history I thought I knew but missed. What have I missed? What am I missing? Where is my soul? I have seen the paintings, the sculptures, walking through the museum of my mind. I am reading with dimmed eyesight, hanging on to the insights I missed, still dangling from my ears. My mind is full of remembrances. That will not end. Stories of my salvation, perhaps yours. Our weekly screen sessions, our current dinner table, laughter from our own folk tales of walks and talks, trips and incidents through our almost 500 years of collecting and telling and laughing in kitchens, living rooms, on mountains, treks, and soft mountain grasses, soft meadow grasses, our backwoods and front porches.
And now I'm going to do a reading called Immortality by Leslie Takahashi. In the daily weave of our lives, those who have died are still strong, guiding threads. Theirs is the golden glimmer, or perhaps the brilliant red, or the melancholy blue. Still, they are part of the whole cloth of our lives. They are the ancestors, the goers before. Through this, we know immortality. In the hour-to-hour rush of our daily tasks, they travel with us through something they taught us, which is now ours to do, through something they loved, which is now ours to carry out, through something we shared, which is now ours alone, and yet not. Through this, we know immortality. In the minute-to-minute grasp of where we are, we remember the joys our departed gave us, which opened us up to hope, the sorrows we knew together, which taught us strength, the life shared, which is now ours to steward. Through this, we know immortality. In the second-to-second pulse of life, we sense the spirit of those we have loved and lost. This presence is too shy for naming, too amorphous for full knowing, and yet as real as the days we shared. Through this, we know immortality. They are more than remembered. They are memory itself. For what we love lives on in the way our beloved dead accompany us throughout our life. Their words and wisdom our guide, their humor our relief, their restless concern for the world our charge. Through this, we know immortality.
I'm Nina Gibans, and I'm the subject of this film, and I am your friend, and I just want to thank you for coming. It has meant a lot to everyone.